there, my name is Irene, and in this video we are going to talk about roofs, the difference between slope and flat roofs, and the difference between floors and roofs. So let's get to it. Alright, so before I actually start modeling a roof for this space that I have here, I want to explore what are the options that we get when it comes to creating roofs in Revit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to actually move to the side of the project. And what I want to do here is to draw my roof. I am going to, once again, go to my floor plan level. So I'm going to go general floor plan and I'm going to be drawing here on the side. So the roof command is on the architectural tab. Same as the floor, it does not have a quick key. And same as the floor, you can see that there is a little arrow, which means that I have multiple ways of creating a Revit roof. Now, the most common one is going to be roof by footprint. This is a pretty cool option because it will basically calculate what is the best behavior to create a roof based on certain parameters that you're going to set. But I also want to highlight the fact that you have the option of creating a roof from an extrusion. So as you can see in the little example that it shows you here, this is a good option if you are creating a very custom shaped roof. If you want the traditional flat or slope roof, roof by footprint is going to be the way to go. You can also create additional parts of a roof, something like, for example, the soffit, which is the flat side that you see on the outer perimeter of a roof on like the underside. You can also create a fascia or a gutter, but for this project here, we don't really need any of these, so we're just going to be focusing on roof by footprint. So when we choose creating roof by footprint, the first thing that we are going to get is a message here telling us that, hey, this roof that you're creating is currently set up to go on the underslab. So what does this mean? Well, basically the way that Revit works is whatever level you choose, and remember, for my general floor plan, the level that is default is the FF, which is my finished floor. So why is it giving me the underslab, which was the level above? Well, the reason for it is because when you are on your floor plan view, Revit automatically assumes that you want to put your roof at the end of the next level. So here it is just confirming. But if that's not what I want to do, I could always come here and manually select what level I want to put my roof on. Now, underslab works perfectly fine for me, so I'm going to keep that guy and we're going to say yes. And now we are on the creation mode for our roof. And you're going to notice that it is very, very similar to when we were creating our floor. You basically get two main options. You're going to draw the boundary of your roof and you're going to select your roof type. Now you get a few options here. And what I'm going to do here is the same way as I created a custom floor type. I'm going to create a custom roof type here just to demonstrate. I'm going to keep it generic so I don't have to deal with any layers or any complications. So I'm just going to go duplicate. Remember, you never mess up with the original. You always duplicate. So I'm going to go here, duplicate, and I basically want it to be the same thickness as my floor. This is going to give me a very nice, clean model. Floor and roof thicknesses, when you're working in interior design projects, is one of those things that is not necessarily that important because usually when you're working in interior design, based on the scope of work, very rarely will you be messing up with the floor slab or the slab above. So the thickness of these elements is sometimes more of a aesthetic choice. So with my new floor type, I'm going to go here to edit and I'm going to change my thickness to 10 inches. Same as with my floor. Okay, apply, okay. So now let's draw our roof. Same as with my floor, I have the option of choosing big walls, and basically I will treat my roof the same way that I treated my floor. That means that I would put the boundary of my roof at the outer side of my perimeter walls. It's exactly the same reasoning as when we were drawing the floor. Remember, you are taking a slice of a bigger pie. So basically we want all of our elements to end where our walls end. But I'm not going to be doing that yet here because, as I said earlier, I want to explore how roofs behave. So instead, I'm just going to draw a square somewhere here on the outside. And basically what I want you to notice is that every side of my rectangle has these little triangles here. So these triangles here are indicating that my roof has a slope. How much slope? If you click on an edge, it's going to tell you. Now, the slope here is not shown on degrees. It is shown on an aspect ratio, so 9 inches to 12 inches. You can also see it here on the dimensions, and you can override that number. Now, if you're not familiar with this measurement for the slope of a roof, and you would prefer to work with something such as, for example, degrees, the way that you can fix this is by changing the unit system in your Revit project. Now, to do this, the quick key is UN for project units, or you can also find it by going under manage, and it's going to be under settings, project units. So here you can basically see all of the different measurements that your Revit project can have and what is their default settings. So for example, if you ever feel like changing from imperial to metric halfway through the project, technically speaking, you can, but keep in mind that this change will not change the unit system of the families and family systems that are already preloaded into your project. It will only change the way that things that are in the project are measured. So it's kind of like a halfway solution. This is why choosing the correct template is so important. And you can watch my video about setting up your Revit project to know more about it. Now, what we are looking for here is slope. So you can see that right now my slope is measured in rise every 12 inches. But if I expand here, you're going to see that there's actually a bunch of options. You have 1:1 ratio, you have mile, percentage, and degrees. So if I put it to degrees and I say okay, and I say okay, you're going to see that now when I select, it tells me 37 degrees. So this will depend on where in the world you are and what are the industry standards that you work with. Here, we do work with the basically aspect ratio. So I'm going to undo Control Z. So it goes back to being inches to 12 inches. Okay. So how does this translate to my geometry being generated? Well, this is my favorite part about Revit, because in other programs, if you have sloped roofs, you basically have to figure out how big, how they're going to behave. But in Revit, all you have to do to set up your slopes, say yes, and we cannot see anything here because we are on the floor plan view. So I'm going to go to the 3D view. And now you can see that the slope is automatically generated for me. So this is one of my favorite things about Revit, the fact that the program will figure out how far your roof has to go before all sides connect. This done by hand is a pain in the ass. It's the only way to say it. And the other thing that I like is that you can also manually change it. So see these little arrows here? If I click and drag, I can make my slope lower or higher. And you will actually see that if you go back to editing your footprint, or basically your roof boundary, if I come here and I click, it has actually modified the ratio of my slope. So that is pretty nice. Always love to give Revit the opportunity to figure out things for myself, but that is only half the fun, because the really cool thing about Revit roofs is the fact that you can change the roof type by changing which sides of the roof have slopes in them. So what do I mean with that? Well, check it out. You don't have to have all of the sides of your roof being sloped. And this is how we create different kinds of roof. So for example, if I want to have an A-frame or a two-sided slope, what I have to do is select one of my sides, let's say this guy, and on the options, you're going to find this option here called Define Slope. So if I check this off, basically I am giving Revit the instruction that this side of my roof has no slope in it. And if I do the same thing on this other side, when I say yes, now I get a two-way or A-frame roof. Pretty cool, pretty easy, right? So if I come here and, for example, let's say that I don't want this guy to have a slope, but I want these two on this side here to have a slope, and I say yes, and this is the kind of roof that I'm gonna get. So you can basically come up with any kind of roof that your heart desires. If you want a roof with a single incline, you can just turn off all sides but one for the slope, and there you have it. So it is pretty cool. It's very versatile, and it's going to allow you to create very complex roofs very easily. The other nice thing about it is that, for example, here I'm working with like relatively simple shape, right? It's a rectangle, like you would have probably been able to figure it out. But what happens if, for example, let's say that instead of just a simple rectangle, I have something more like an L shape. So let's say something like that. And then I'm going to come here and use my trim. Remember, the same rule that applies for our floors applies for a roof, which basically means that I cannot have intersecting lines or gaps in my boundary. I have to have a single, nice, clean loop. And if I say yes, you're going to see that once again, basically Revit will do the job of figuring it out. And I can come here and, for example, say I want this guy to actually be lower than the previous one. And again, Revit will do all of the calculations for you. This is a godsend. I personally hate drawing roofs. You also have a few more advanced options. You have things like, for example, creating dormers, so you can have kind of like roofs that crash into other roofs, if not all of them start and end at the same point. But again, that is a little bit more advanced. We're not going to be getting into it in this video. And in fact, for this project in particular, we do not want a slope roof, because as I said in my previous video about floors, in the real world, what is most likely to happen for this project in particular is that the top of my project wouldn't actually be the top of the building, but instead it would be the slab for the next floor because it is a multi-story building. So if I am pretty sure that what should go at the top of my building is another floor, why am I using a roof? Well, if we go to the south view, for example, you're going to see that the way that roofs work is exactly the opposite as floors. Whatever level you choose, your roof will be extruded away from the walls, aka up. So when you create a floor, the floor is extruded down from the level. When you create a roof, the roof is extruded up from the level. So the reason that we use roofs, even if I know that realistically what should go here above is a floor, is because in modeling sense, this will make things easier for you. Because then you don't have to be calculating, oh, like my height from floor to ceiling, plus the thickness of my slab, plus this, plus this, plus that. Simply, you're going to set up your floor for your finished floor. You're going to set up your level for your under slab, and then your floor will go down and your roof will go up. Both of them away, which basically means that you get exactly the amount of space that you need in between the levels. So it is just something that will make your life easier, okay? But the other thing to consider here is that if what I have here should be actually a floor, then I cannot have a sloped roof. So what I want to show you here is that there is a very easy way to create flat roofs in Revit, and that is going to be the following. So I'm going to delete this roof because I don't really need it. I'm going to go back to my floor plan, and this time we're going to create the roof for our project. So I'm going to go roof by footprint, and again, we do want it to be on the under slab. And check this out. What I am going to do here is before I start drawing my roof, I'm going to come here to my options and I will uncheck define slope. Remember, define slope is what is going to make it so your roof is at a slope or not. And if it is checked off by default, it basically means that your roof has zero slope, aka a flat roof. So now I can use my pick walls, and basically I want to follow the same boundary that I did for my floor, pick them all up, and then I'm going to say yes. And when I go here to my 3D view, there you go. This is the easiest way to create a flat roof. Now, if you create a sloped roof, you made the mistake and now you're like, oh crap, I need it to be flat. That's fine. You can select your roof, go to edit footprint, or also you can just double click and that will open the edit boundaries. You can select all of your lines and you can check off the define slopes. That's not a problem, but I am of the mind that it is much easier to work with things if you do them right the first time. The other thing that I want to highlight is the fact that same as with the floors, you can have openings in your roof as long as it is another closed boundary. So if I go here to my 3D view, now I have a very nice skylight where, all the rain will come in. So same as with my floor for this project in particular, it does not make any sense to have a secondary boundary. But for example, eventually we're going to get into stairs, and this is how you create the openings so your stairs can go from one level to the next. Now, same as with the floors, you can actually work with the slope of your roofs, even if you're working with a flat roof for things like the water drainage, but we're not going to go there in this video. Again, we are keeping things very simple for this project. And this is basically what we would call the outer shell. As you can see, it's basically like a shoebox. This is what you want to see. A nice, clean little box that defines the perimeter of your project. With that, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you find that helpful, but if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to write them in the comments. Remember, you can like, you can subscribe, but otherwise, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you very much for sticking through, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.